International trade and quotas. And there's a lot in this graph, and there's a lot that's going on. So we kind of do it like one at a time, and we look at things. So one of the first things that we want to do is identify the following: consumer surplus with no trade, and then producer surplus with no trade. So consumer surplus with no trade, and here is domestic supply is on this line, and then you've got domestic demand down here. So here is equilibrium price, it's at P1, and Q3 is the equilibrium demand. Now, this is for a no trade. So what you have right now here is the consumer surplus with no trade would be P1 to equilibrium all the way up to price, so it would be H. Now the producer surplus is anything below the price, so it's I, L, and T. So the producer surplus is I, L, and T. The consumer surplus is H. So that's what we have with no trade. Now, what is the consumer surplus if we trade at the world price? Now, the world price is down here. It's below equilibrium. So all of this PW is the world price. So it goes here. So what is the consumer surplus at this time? It's not H anymore. It is H, I, J, K, and then it's L, M, N, R, S. So all of that is consumer surplus. And then what is the producer surplus at the world price? It is just T. So if you notice that in the domestic situation with no trade, producer surplus was T, L, and I, and consumer surplus was just H. Now producer surplus went way down to T, and then consumer surplus was all of this. And this is like the United States, and this is our situation with China and Europe and other things like that. Our producers, we don't have that many producers. We're getting all of our things from overseas. Now, what happens if we decide to import? What is the amount that we import at the world price? Well, this is what we demand. Q5 is what we demand at the world price. And then Q1 is what we actually produce at the world price. So the difference in here, the Q5 minus Q1, is the amount that we import. So we basically import V, W, X, and Y. We import that. Now, if the government decides to do a quota and they have a tariff, and then they're going to put the tariff, that is PT, the price at the tariff part, here is the new price. So notice it's higher than the world price, but less than the domestic price. So what we're doing is our imports were Q5 minus Q1. Now we're looking at Q4 and Q2. So this is how much we import now. So when we have a tariff, we're going to import less. The price is going to be higher. And what's going to happen, as you can see, we now have more producer surplus. It's T&L. It's not what it was previously, but producers like it. Consumers don't like it anymore because now they've lost this consumer surplus. The consumer surplus is now H, I, J, and K. So consumer surplus has been reduced a little bit. It's still better than what's at the domestic, but it's there. So if you go one at a time, it makes more sense. I know lots of you will have questions on this. We'll do it one at a time, and I might have you draw it just separately without all of the items on there. But this basically shows in the United States, when we have world trade in our situation, that our producers are really hurt. It goes from I, L, and T, just a T. Consumers are really helped with world trade because we get things cheaper than we could do it ourselves. And then if we have tariffs, it reduces our imports, which we see, Q5 minus Q1 versus Q4 minus Q2. So our imports are less, our price is higher, producers get a little bit of extra surplus, and we reduce consumer surplus. So that's international trade and quotas. Feel free to ask questions in class and in Google Classroom or after this video.